Why do people become homeless? Do they sleep on the street? Where do they go when it's freezing? How does someone become homeless? These and many more questions are discussed next on Lakeshore Focus.
Programming is supported by NIPSCO. Today's young minds are constantly reimagining what our world will be like tomorrow. That's why NIPSCO is upgrading its infrastructure now, so we're ready for whatever comes next. More information at nipsco.com/future.
Welcome again to Lakeshore Focus, a weekly show highlighting the key issues, important events, and interesting people in our region. I'm Keith Kirkpatrick. They say that many of us are only one paycheck away from becoming homeless. Not me, you say? Well, it can happen to almost anyone with little warning. The stories are out there, and they are way too familiar to our guests today. Let's meet two women whose lives are dedicated to taking care of those who are without the essentials of life, namely food, clothing, and shelter. We have Dr. Sharron Liggins, who is the Executive Director for the Continuum of Care Network, and Sister Peg Spindler, the Executive Director at Sojourner Truth House. Welcome both of you to Lakeshore Focus.
Thank you. Keith.
I don't think people probably realize the icons that you two are in the community. Like anybody talks about the homeless, it's like your two names come up pretty commonly for the great work that you both do. How come you guys are so famous?
I'll leave that up to Sister.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I mean, you really are known for what you do, Sister Peg. I mean, everybody's like, oh, you know Sister Peg. I mean, why is that?
Well, I don't exactly know, except that we've been around a while. And I think there aren't a whole lot of people that do what we do and enjoy doing it and find reward in it. And I know Sharron and I have been doing this for a long time. We've known each other for a long time, and we support each other in the work. So I don't know about the famous part, but maybe it's just because we're in people's faces with our needs for the homeless and for just about the issue itself, trying to bring it to the fore.
Well, I have a theory about this, but I'm curious to hear your reactions to this. So, Sharron, why are you so famous? Why does everybody know who you are and what you're doing?
I'm not certain that everybody knows who I am, but thank you for that. The overall impetus for all of us, Sister Peg and myself and all of those who are in the trenches of working with the homeless populations, I think it's because when there is something to be done that's related to true work and truly being passionate about those who actually are voiceless, and that's what we deal with. Many times these are the voiceless who are in dire need. We try to step up. It's not about us. It's really about those who suffer from the plague, and I call it a plague of homelessness, and that includes our children, our youth who can be unaccompanied, our adults. It's a multitude of folks. So it's not the famous, it's just the busyness.
I think you both hit on it, which is great, and I think it is because of the compassion that you both have and the huge dedication that you both put into this. I mean, and it is kind of in your face. I mean, every time these issues come up, you guys are there. So I think that's probably the in the face part. But let's talk a little bit about why people become homeless, because I said in the beginning, you know, a lot of people are one paycheck away from becoming homeless. Spin that out for people. What does that really mean, that people are one paycheck away from becoming homeless?
Well, I'm thinking of two cases right now. One person was several years ago that came through our doors, and I'm not sure where she had worked, but she had a good job, she had an apartment, she was doing fine. And then because of the economic downturn, it took a couple years for it to kind of filter down to, that's the trickle down, I'll tell you, trickle down to her job, and she lost her job. Simple as that. And no mental health issues, no addiction, no nothing. She just lost her job, one paycheck away. And when the last paycheck was gone, she lost her apartment. And then she found herself in the shelter. And so it wasn't that she couldn't work. It wasn't that she was lazy. She was embarrassed. She was shocked that she was in this position. And she worked.
Now, why doesn't somebody like that have a little cushion? Why didn't she have a little cushion to lean on?
It's very possible that her paycheck wasn't big enough to put away a cushion. I mean, she may, you know, put your rent, I mean, the rent is supposed to be around what, 30%?
30% of your income.
Yeah, of your income. And oftentimes for the clients that we see, it could be 60, 70, 80% or more of their income. Like if they get SSI or they're getting a paycheck of something, it could be a pitiful paycheck. And so she may have not been able to put away, or she could have, because I don't know that part of the story. She could have put it away, spent it month after month, and then it was gone, and trying to find another job. So she came to us and eventually found a job in Hammond, and now she works in Ohio.
Plus another piece of that story could be, I mean, you said it was an individual woman without a husband or without a partner or without a roommate.
Right.
It's a little tough to kind of make it on your own if you have a moderate or a modest kind of income, unless you're really making good money. But even then, people spend it all, right, sometimes. So what does that mean to you about that one paycheck away?
Same type of story. Recently dealing with actually a veteran who had served his country, then found himself working actually with a very nice job. The income was good and he got laid off. And from being laid off, of course, he was living at the level of his means. Income was adequate, had a wife. His wife was working, but then she passed away. And that left him as a widower. And then, of course, the loss of a job. He began to have some spiraling down. His monthly income that had been coming began to diminish. So it's the same type of story where they have been working fairly well, and then over the circumstances, sometimes not under their control, they lose their job or they become ill. Often health becomes a problem. So we always have to consider that it may be an illness that actually puts you one paycheck away from being homeless. You begin to have the illness, you can't work, you need to pay your medical bills, you find yourself in your home, it becomes foreclosed, or you're in an apartment and you lose the opportunity to deal with that. And it's just simply a part of the life. It could be any one of us
So
at any time.
there's so many circumstances. So you touched on that the health side, the financial side of health,
Absolutely.
and so forth. But the stories kind of go on. It's like you have a spouse who runs up all your credit and bankrupts you. You get divorced.
Absolutely.
And you don't have enough means. It kind of goes on and on. You get arrested, and all of a sudden you lose everything.
Big time,
right?
yeah.
So when you come back you get out of being incarcerated, even held for a couple of days, you come back and find your apartment's gone, right? It's like,
Or if you're arrested and you're in jail for a while and you come out, half the time they don't get their ID back or anything else, and so then we have to work with them from bottom up, getting all their important vital records and everything else. So it's
so what's the
so many
magnitude
strikes.
of this problem? Because I know you do this count, but this is an elusive number, because first of all, there's two kinds of people. Ones that are clearly homeless, have really no place to go, and then what do they call them? Couch surfers?
Couch surfers, that's our famous term, couch surfers. And they're classified as homeless, but they are not usually counted in the statistics. And so there's that group that go from couch to couch, from surface to surface. They're living with their families, and then when a family member says you can no longer stay here, they're out on the street. One of the populations that we really never really think about in the depth are the unaccompanied youth. There's over 150,000 that they've been able to count in one night who have either lost their parents, their foster children, their runaways, but that's another population that we really have to consider when we are dealing with the homeless populations.
And we hear those stories more about them being sucked into crime
Absolutely.
or into prostitution
Absolutely.
or getting involved with drugs. But you don't really sometimes think that probably started because they had no place to go.
and they're preyed on as a result. They find, pimps and so on are looking all the time for kids that are
Absolutely.
out there, and
Boys
they'll
or girls, right?
Boys or girls, right? And,
Yes,
and human
either.
trafficking begins. They'll promise them a place to stay, all those kinds of things, and then they're sucked in, and getting out is more their
difficult.
notion.
So I know this is tough to pinpoint, but kind of our region here, which is kind of what you guys focus on a little bit more, our 5-7 counties in this corner.
Right.
Just at any one time, how many people are just literally living on the street? and about how many people you think are just out there, just surfing around, trying to figure out a place to give our audience at least some idea of how big that is?
Within the Lake County region, we'll start with Lake County, we do a point-in-time count across the nation, and so it's important to understand that once a year by federal mandate, we do a point-in-time count, and it's to be able to aid us in knowing the unduplicated number of who happens to be homeless. We have to remember that's the tip of the iceberg. It does not encompass the HRSA definition of homelessness, which includes couch surfing. It's the HUD definition of homelessness, meaning that you're unaccompanied or your family, you're living either in the street or in a shelter. And those particular are in your car, or living in an abandoned building. We have that quite frequently. People live in abandoned buildings. There are, and we have to remember that the count does not include always the ones who live in their car but work every day. We have to remember there are homeless who actually are working. They're
so what's
the
that number
poor.
that you come up with?
The number that we've come up with in this past 2015 was about 500 across, and this is just one night between all of our counties, including Jasper, LaPorte, Porter, and Lake County.
Okay, so somebody hears that number 500 and goes, well, to some extent, that's not a really big number, 500. But you're again saying that's the tip of the iceberg.
I'm saying that's only on that one night that we did the count. It does not include the entire annual year that we're looking at that homeless population. And so the difficulty is that Sister Peg can give you numbers that she actually sees in a monthly period. And if you multiply that times 10 or 12 months, then you are really beginning to look at what truly exists in our area.
So what is that number for you?
Well, first of all, I want to say that, well, I was going to say something, but it went out of my head. But our number is, I would say, 20-some to 40 in the shelters that we work with. Now, that's not all of the counties that Sharron works with, but we work with.
Is that per month?
Per month, yeah. And that includes the children, and sometimes they hold over from one month to the next because we haven't been able to find housing, or we're still looking for their birth certificate, or whatever it might be, that makes it longer than a month. And so there may be some holdovers and so on. But we've housed maybe between 40 and 60 people a year, because some of those that come through the shelter leave. They can't deal with the fact that that it takes a while to find housing, takes a while to find program that they might, qualify for. And so they just leave. They go back home, they go back to wherever they came from, or maybe they're the traveling mentally ill who go from shelter to shelter across the country. When their check comes in, they move on, and so on. So it's really hard to pinpoint. And Sharron mentioned that this is only the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure that one night when they do that count, they don't get everybody.
Absolutely.
So it's probably safe to say in a region like ours, we even be fairly conservative, this probably touches 4,000 or 5,000 people per year at least, or at some point out there.
I would say over
maybe
2,000
more.
to 3,000 within our own particular region. The state, and I'll just give you a number so it looks like on the one given night that we do it in January, for the entire state there were about 3,600.
Why do you guys count in the winter?
We count, thank you for asking. I'd love to answer that one.
Why not count in the summer?
We do count in
Thank
the
you, I
summer.
asked that too.
We do, but it's a little different. The purpose for counting in the winter is that our prayer is that they are actually sheltered. It's an unduplicated number. We want to make sure it's everybody across the entire country provides that number. It's unduplicated. We hope that they're places that are safe and warm. We're hoping they're living in their shelters. We're hoping that they are someplace safe, that they're not on the streets, that they're not someplace cold, and that we are able to protect them. At one point, and I have to give this story, when we used to do the count, about 4 or 5 years ago, Sister Peg and I were out one year, and it was freezing, snow was up to our knees, and there were 2 incidents. We found a family, I won't tell the community, but they were living in an abandoned schoolyard in a tent, and with a propane tank, and they had their children with them. And the other family that we found, won't name the city, but they were living in an abandoned building in the basement, and the clothing and the food and the children's toys were actually frozen to the ground, but the family was living there. And then Sister and I went into another building in which it was an abandoned home, and had a person homeless living there. They had all their little belongings. They had their toothbrush, and the water in the commode was frozen over, where they'd have to chip it to be able to get their
And
water.
in the closet was a beautifully ironed shirt. So obviously this person was either looking for work or actually working, trying to make a go of it, but they had not been able to find housing or hadn't saved up enough. And I just, when I saw that, I said, oh my God.
So what's interesting here, and you touched on it again, a lot of people would look at this and go, well, at least adults got a fighting chance to find a job and so forth. But when you talk about children who want to be with their parents, or the parents want to keep the kids with them,
Right.
you can't just say to them, well, go get a job, right? Or earn some money.
Right.
You know, they are at the mercy of whatever their parents are stuck with. So, I mean, that's a huge thing. So we talked about kind of the magnitude of the problem and who it touches. I mean, so what are some of the solutions here? What are some of the things that these people need, or what do you do to try to help them get back on their feet?
Well, part of it, what we do, and we've grown to be able to do, is we take them where they're at, and we help them with vital records. Like, as I said before, many of them come in and they don't have their birth certificate, and you can't do anything in terms of housing if you don't have birth certificate, ID, et cetera. So with many of them, we'll have to start there, and sometimes that means...
Or a permanent address, right? You
Right,
can't
or
do anything with that
and we'll let them
permanent
use
address,
our address if they need to, until we can get them a permanent address. But oftentimes, getting those records is the first step. And then from there, you begin to look and see, well, what are their issues? Is there mental illness or addiction? Do they have some kind of disability where they're getting disability already? Good, then where can we, not good that they have the issue, but good that they have some income. So then that widens our ability to look for housing. If they don't have any income at all, then we try and get them whatever food stamps or TANF or whatever they might qualify for to get started on. Connect them with township in order to find housing for them. If there's a mental illness or addiction, then we might be able to find a group home or something like that with the mental health facilities in the area. So it's a many-pronged approach that you have to take, because you have to take each person. He or she has their own set of issues, and it may be simply let's teach more employability and so on, which we're doing. We're working with Work One and all that to do that, and you guys do that too.
Well, I think people forget this loss of everything. If you're really pretty homeless, you've not got clothing, you've not got food,
Right.
you don't have all this documentation, you just really have no
Nothing.
things that represent that you're part in our society. Things mean you're somebody.
That's true. And to continue with the question, on behalf of where Sister and multiple organizations provide that guidance to the mental health, substance abuse, FSSA, food stamps, other resources, then we have to remember that there are emergency shelters, there's transitional housing, which means that they can stay there up to 24 months. And then we have a permanent housing. It's called permanent supportive housing. And that's a lot of what the Continuum does in connection with Sister Peg's Sojourner Truth House and multiple other organizations. And what we find is that frequently, for those who are homeless, affordable housing or adequate job payment is a necessity for them.
So again, there's two issues. One was that you got to find the place. But
Right.
the second, they got to afford to be able
to actually
Correct.
to access it, because they don't have a deposit. They don't
Absolutely.
have first month's rent.
Absolutely.
Can't get the utilities turned on.
Absolutely.
But if they do that, then they got to maintain it.
And you have to maintain it. So you're talking the average person who has, if you have been classified as homeless, approximately $2,000 to $2,500 cash to be able to start over. Or as Sister says, if you've lost your ID, and we have to consider that those who are exiting the penal system, often they come out without any of their ID. And then once they're out, if they've had a felony, they can't go into public housing. They can't
Right.
receive food stamps, so their resources are limited. There's a milieu of things that have actually brought about homelessness, including the 70s and 80s when they were closing the mental health institutions. That simply added to the burden of homelessness.
And all those people are still out
they're
trying
out.
to find a place with very limited resources. again,
Absolutely,
right?
and their children are affected by it. And often the other aspect, and we just can't forget the children who age out of foster care.
Yeah.
Very important to remember that as they're aging out of foster care, they don't have places to go. They lack the education, job awareness, the ability to move forward. So, it's a big problem.
You could probably just go on and add
Forever.
to the size of this population and all the dynamics of it. We're down to a couple minutes, so let's try to end the show with a couple of good success stories so people
got
know.
one. We got
Because, yeah, tell us
We
a,
go.
a
Okay.
real uplifting story.
A couple of years ago, we had this thing called Coffee and Conversation at Sojourner, and people come and we give them a tour, and a client or two usually tells her story. Well, this particular one, I had two clients ready to tell their story, and they were all dressed up and excited about this and all this, and they came in and they were around the area where our guests were going to come. And the guests started coming in, and I was welcoming people, and I noticed out of the corner of my eye, they were too. Hi, my name is so-and-so, welcome, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we all sat down. I did my spiel. We went on the tour, sat down afterwards, and you should have seen the look on the faces of the people when those two women stood up as clients to talk. Nobody knew they were clients. And I reminded them, and I've used that story so often, Keith, homeless people look like us.
Yeah. Quick story from you, just success, particularly with this veterans thing that's open.
Absolutely a success story. We just opened 44 units, one-bedroom units.
Yes.
Delighted to have that for the homeless veterans. They have one bedroom, they have a living room, dining room, kitchen, all furnished. Absolutely delightful. And one of the stories comes from that particular veteran who actually moved from out of state, came here without a job, had to stay on the couch of a stepfather. Became successful in the fact that he did have some issues with substance abuse, got that taken care of, now has a successful job, living with permanent supportive housing. Actually, he was dressed in a suit and tie, and nobody knew when we had him actually doing a major panel discussion. Nobody knew he was dressed. They thought he was just fabulous.
You introduced us to those people, and the thing that I noticed the other day was how proud they were of having their own place to be. So I want to thank both of you for being on the show, and more importantly for the work you do and the dedication that you do, because you're helping a lot of people, and I really thank you for that. So thanks for being here
We thank you
today.
for spotlighting the issue.
Thank you so much. We are so appreciative.
Yes.
All right. I've been blessed in my life to meet and get to know a large number of people who struggle every day to access the essentials of life. They have limited abilities, constricted resources, or numerous disadvantages. Some have all of these in multiples. You may not be aware, but these people are everywhere around us. I think the reactions to these struggling individuals fall into a few categories. The first I call the no evidence position. If I don't see it, it does not exist. It's a safe place to remain because you can shelter yourself from facing reality. Maybe we should call this the ostrich response. Your head is actually buried in the sand and you don't truly want to know. How about the Scrooge reaction? Charles Dickens quotes Ebenezer Scrooge as saying, "They are the lazy, shiftless poor." Scrooge embodies the person who blames those people for their plight and refuses any responsibility or compassion. What about those who hide behind their faith? If you hear the passage which states, "They will be with you always," you can say, well, no matter what I do, there will forever be poor people, disadvantaged folks all around. I might as well get used to it. Again, your conclusion can be that nothing I do will make a difference, so I won't do a thing. Finally, we have abdication. It's not my responsibility. The government or the church or the do-gooders will handle it, and I can spend my money and time on more worthwhile efforts like dining out, golfing, new clothes, expensive vacations. With all of those excuses, why should we care? It's simple. They are human beings, real people. Let me refute each excuse. There is clear evidence and statistics to show the needs in the world. They are not lazy. They aspire, hope, and strive like so many of us. Your faith says do something, not tolerate it. Lastly, it is not the sole responsibility for any government unit or organization to handle these challenges in isolation. I know I'm probably preaching to the choir because our viewers care and are doers. Hopefully, I have given you some ammunition to address the excuses given by others. Don't let them off the hook. Challenge their likely response, and maybe you will get a few of them to start caring and do something. We hope that our show enlightened and challenged you in some way. If you have thoughts and comments about today's broadcast, send them to us at our email address. You can also access our past shows from the website. Both are listed on your screen. Tell your friends and family that you watch Lakeshore Public Television and it has an impact in your life. Be sure and join us again next week for another Lakeshore Focus. Until then, I'm Keith Kirkpatrick saying, make a positive difference in our world today.
Is supported by NIPSCO. Today's young minds are constantly reimagining what our world will be like tomorrow. That's why NIPSCO is upgrading its infrastructure now, so we're ready for whatever comes next. More information at nipsco.com/future.